share my screen. I'll share this one. Go into PowerPoint. And welcome you all to the Power BI User Group Denmark, where we today have the subject of using Power BI tables as Excel data types. And we have the honor of having Jakob Nielsen from Microsoft, the office, or was it called Excel team from the headquarters of Microsoft, and Lars from the Danish. And also they have a guest, Andreas, Jaeger, that will put in. So thank you to all of you for taking the time to do a presentation. Some housekeeping rules before I let Lars and Jakob and Andreas introduce themselves. Yeah, remember to mute yourself. You can use the chat during the session, and this meeting will be recorded and it will be posted in our YouTube channel afterwards. And the next event that we have is in 4 weeks, with Reed Havens, who will do a session about visualization magic in Power BI. You can sign up during using the user group, of course. And then I'll stop sharing and let Jakob and introduce himself, and Lars and Andreas as well. So take it away.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Just, for having us today. And everyone for showing interest in the topic. It's super exciting and also energizing to get to talk about something that we are passionate about, which is helping people get more out of Excel and Power BI. So I'm Jakob, and I'm a designer in the Excel team at Microsoft. I am meeting you here from my home office in Redmond, Washington, just outside of Seattle. And as Eric mentioned, with me I have Lars Andersen from the Microsoft subsidiary in Denmark, as well as our special guest Andreas Jaeger from Bestseller, who we have worked with a lot on this particular feature in Excel and in Power BI. Again, my job is to, work with the customers around how they're using Excel, see what they're doing in Excel, and I can actually see some familiar faces among the participants today, and also a lot of others that I hope to get a chance to work with at some point going forward. So welcome. This presentation is about getting data into Excel, and we have added a way to do that that hopefully makes that easier and also more secure to get access to centralized data. There's a number of things that we will go through, but it sort of evolves around 3 different things. One is what we call organization data types that are powered by Power BI. We've also made custom data types with Power Query that we'll introduce you to. And then finally, we'll look at how we've made it easier to access data in Power BI datasets directly from pivot tables in Excel. I hope you will like the demos that we have. And along the way, if you have questions, please do not hesitate to jump in. We'll monitor the chat as we go along for questions, and then hopefully stop ourselves. But you're also welcome to go ahead and break in and stop us. We have plenty of time for questions. Before I get started on this, I want to give you an introduction to data types in Excel, because that's actually a pretty big deal that is not only about what we're talking about in this presentation, but it's actually a very significant set of investments that we are doing in Excel in order to help people do more with Excel. In order to understand that, we have to go a little bit back in time, but not too much back in time, because if you looked at even to late 80s, 1978, late 70s, 1978, 79, this was still the predominant way of how you managed a business. Piece of paper with numbers and with text. And if you wanted to total something, you brought out your calculator and made a total. There was a guy, Dan Bricklin, that said, hey, maybe we could do this with a computer. Let's put this on a PC. And he invented VisiCalc. That was basically the same thing. It was numbers and text on a grid, not on paper, but on a screen. And then there was this notion of functions that could be used on the numbers and text that gave you the calculations. And that basically became the killer application for the PC. Time went by, and in 2003, this was what Excel looked like at that point in time. In 2003 already, people were doing a lot of things in Excel and pretty incredible things with Excel. But we have a team at Microsoft called Microsoft Research, and one of the researchers there, Simon Peyton-Jones, wrote an internal paper that basically suggested that, hey, while people do a lot of things with Excel, there also seems to be a limit to what can be expressed with Excel. And he termed that as a sort of a glass ceiling for what users can model in Excel. And then he suggested two things to address that. And I'll come back to that, what those two things were. One of them was the introduction of data types. So the notion that Excel, let me just switch to this slide for a second. The notion that Excel have values that are not only numbers and text, but there are data types that you can put into the grid that really models the end user's domains in a better way. So for example, adding support for arrays and vectors and even domain-specific data types that could be made by not only the Excel team, but also the world. Another thing that he suggested was, in order to move further in what people can do with Excel, we need to let the users themselves define functions of Excel. So not only have the built-in functions, but also have a way to define new functions. And for those of you that may have followed what's happening in Excel these days, well, we're introducing things like the lambda function, which is really a function to define other functions. There's things like let and so on that also helps you create more complex functions in an easier way. And this is all based on the original ideas of Simon Peyton-Jones back in 2003. And that's what's guiding us. So things takes time. And for more than a decade, the Excel team was focused on other things, adding other things to Excel. But around 2014-15, a group of designers, program managers, engineers in the Excel team started working on a project to bring data types in Excel. The very first version of that was the stocks and geography data types that we introduced in 2018. And what I'll do is to actually give you sort of a short demo in Excel of what that is today. So stocks and geography are the two of the built-in data types that you may or may not be familiar with. So for example, I have an Excel workbook here, blank workbook. There's no data connections in this. There's no hidden CSV file somewhere that I've imported with the information. And I want to get some data. And specifically, I want to go look at Microsoft. I can do Johnson & Johnson, and maybe also look at Starbucks. And the stocks data type can recognize what you are entering into the grid. So it actually triggers this suggestion to convert to stocks for the three things, the three texts that I just typed into the grid. And I can click that. And what happens then is that the text that I entered, Excel will go search for those stocks and bring back a data type or an entity value that it's putting into the cells instead of just the text. So this cell becomes a data type value, and I can go and, for example, click on the little icon that is in front of the data type, and then I can look into all of the information that has been brought into Excel about this this particular stock. So I can see where it's traded, what the price is, and so on. And I can do that, of course, for the other stocks as well. So now these values are data type values. Let me just show you a little bit more about how this can be used. But before I do that, I just want to turn this into a table of stocks. And now I can sort of expand that table out into my grid. So for example, I can say, I want to see what the price is. I also want to see what the change is today. And I want to see what that was in percentage. And furthermore, I also want to do a little bit of calculation. So let's say I have 5 of these, or I want to buy 5 of these and 10 of these. And let me do 5 of the Starbucks as well. So I entered some data. But what I can also do is I can have this these numbers that I brought into the grid, of course, participate in a calculation. So I can say 5 times and then go get the price, and it will calculate. Again, I didn't need to know anything about where to get this data. It was brought in through the stocks data type. And furthermore, if I go refresh my workbook and the numbers has changed, those things will also refresh. So there's nothing I need to import or go think about how to get that data again in order for the data to be the most current data. So this is the stock data type. What we also introduced was the geography data type. And let's just put in 2 of my favorite cities here. It doesn't recognize it before I've entered 3, but I'll show you that I can go to the data tab and to the data types gallery, and I can basically select geography as my data type. And instead of stocks, it now recognizes this as cities, and I can go see the information on that. And in a similar fashion, I can go reference this data and say, I want to look at the population. And then I want, by the way, I want to compare that to the population of Copenhagen. Again, this data comes from Bing and Wikipedia and so on the web, and it's brought into Excel, and I don't need to know how to actually get that data. So what I just showed you was the stocks and geography data types. That was the first data types that we introduced. And this can be used to do things like this, you know, do a portfolio tracker. You can also, you can make your own models around that and your own templates. One of the things that's happening in this space is that we are adding around 100 built-in data types that are targeted at consumers. And we do that through a collaboration with a company called Wolfram Alpha. So what you'll see coming out and it's in insiders now, and it's rolling out to production, is that you will have, for example, a chemistry data type that can bring in the entire periodic table into Excel. We have a baby names data type, and so on. So if you like American baby names, you can compare the data on those. But around 100 data types. About a year and a half ago, I went out and had conversations together with my colleagues in the team, had conversations with users in enterprises around data types. And we talked about how they use data in Excel, where does that data come from, what are the challenges that they have getting that data into Excel. And then as part of that conversation, we also showed them the demo that you just saw of the stocks and geography data types. And what happened in those conversations was the following. That's really cool, was what most people said. Wow, I didn't know that you could do that. And then the second thing that happened was that they said, well, I think this could be useful for someone else. And they all said that, which made us conclude that, okay, if you are a user in an enterprise, you probably don't see a lot of value in using stocks and geography yourself. However, there was a third thing that also happened, and that was, however, if you, instead of stocks and geography, could give me these data types, the same kind of capability on my own data, then that would be really cool. They mentioned things like, customers, products, employees, styles, vignettes, vessels, containers, things like that, as the things that they would like to have as data types. A long list of different things or data that they worked in Excel with and could see being used for data types. So what we did was that we decided to do that. And that is what led to what we call organization data types. And we also choose to team up with the Power BI team to create those. So I'll let Lars show you a demo of that. So Lars, if you want to share your screen and maybe also introduce yourself. And again, if any one of you have questions, do not hesitate to break in and ask it in the chat and interrupt us.
Yes, you should see my screen now. My name is Lars. As Jakob mentioned in the beginning, I'm a technical specialist at Microsoft Denmark, and my focus area is with Power BI. So I work with all the major Danish customers and people like Just and Eric, and I think those who are Danish on the call have probably seen me before. And what I want to show you here is exactly what Jakob just told you, that how these organizational data types work. So let's, the first example here is an example where you should consider me as a customer success manager who got a number of customer complaints. And they were entered in a spreadsheet. So here, this is my customer name over here. And then there is a number of complaints over here. So if I was just a customer success manager and I really didn't know how to use these organizational data types, well, then I would take the customer name and then I would look it up in my CRM system to get contact details. And if I also needed insights in the revenue for the customer and so on, I would need to look up a BI report as well. So what we can do here is we have created a customer data type in Excel. So if I go to the data ribbon, I've selected my customers here, go to the data ribbon, and then I find this customer's data type, and it has a little description, and you'll see in a few minutes how it's actually been created. So when I click on customers, then these customer names will be converted into data types in Excel. So now you see this little suitcase icon where I can get more details on each customer. And what I would like to see in here is that I would actually like to have some contact information. So who should I contact? A contact name, a phone number. And then in order to prioritize who should I call first, I would actually like to see their recent total orders. So current total orders. And I can just make these here. And then I can sort this current total orders by largest to smallest. And then I can easily say, okay, I should contact Horst at Quickstop because he has the highest total order, and make him happy again, and so on and so forth. So this is one example of how you could use organizational data type. Another example is to use it for more like operational stuff, like an invoice. So we still have organizations in the world who actually do their invoices in Excel. And in here we can use multiple organizational data types. So one of them here is to use my customer to select a custom name, and then the address will be changed. Down here I have product descriptions, and right now this invoice has not been finalized. So I need to select these products, and then I go up to my data ribbon again, and this time I select products. So now these columns or cells are converted into the product data type, and then I can, as Jakob told you as well, I can use this data type and say, okay, I would actually like to have the unit price in here. If it works here. And then if I change the quantity over here, then the calculation is done, and then I can use Excel as my invoicing engine using the organizational data types. Okay, then you may ask now, how has this actually been created? So before I share that, then let me make a fast recap of what you actually saw. So the whole key here is that the organizational data types is in the data ribbon Excel. Select the one that you have access to, and you need to be granted access to the data sets through Power BI. Then you can add all the fields that are in this data type, and then you can refresh on demand when data gets updated and get the newest data in here. So the next part here is to show you how has this actually been created. And this is the Power BI user group, so we will look at Power BI Desktop now. This is a sample report with Northwind traders data. And what I have in here is in my model view. I have a number of tables in here when it loads in a second, hopefully here. And the customer data type that you saw before is actually this customer's table in this data model. And the way that you can tell that this is an organizational data type is when you select it and look at the properties, then you're seeing this is feature table, and that is set to yes. When you do that, then you are enabling the organizational data type feature. And when I click edit in here, then we can see a short description of what is this data type about. We'll be patient. And also a label column, which is my company name, and then a key column. This is all that is required to create a feature table or an organizational data type. Put in a description, have your row label, and then a key column. Then if I go into the data view of Power BI, then you can actually see this is my customer data type, or the content of this table. And if I open Excel, another sheet of Excel here, and then we can just take the first sorry, here, the first company, which is called Alfred's Futterkiste. Here. And now I need to go to the data ribbon, and then I need to select my customers. And then Power BI will find, or Excel will find this data set in Power BI. And now you can actually see here that this data in this organization data type is in fact the same as the data in my Power BI data set. So the contact name is Maria, the title is sales representative, and so on and so forth. So all the data you have in your table in the Power BI, that is what is being displayed in Excel. Good. So then you saw in Jakob's demo both with the stock and the geography that there was actually images involved as well. And you can do that with your own organizational data types as well. So if I go to another example here, which is Lego datasets. So this has been collected by data from a site called Rebrickable, and also in linking to information on lego.com. And they have the images. So if I go down here, first of all, add a new item, let me call this Lego Doc, one of their first products at Lego. Now it's looking at how can I find this Lego Doc, and right now there are a number of products in this data set that is actually called something with Lego Doc. So over here I have to select the one that I actually want to see. So I select the top one, and then I can add a new column in here. And as you saw before, I can reference this data type. So I say equal dot, and then I have this that is called image. So now you see that I actually have images for all my products in here now. And these products or these images, they are in the cell in Excel. So if I make the Excel or the cell bigger, then my image will also be bigger. So it's not a picture that is floating around. It's actually a native part of the cell in Excel. Yes. So the data types part you saw was this Northwind Traders that was in my, finally in my workspace. I didn't show you how to publish it, but this is how it works. So create the data set in Power BI, publish it to the workspace, and then it's available in Excel. And then you also saw this adding images. And now Jakob will take over again to show you something about.
I wonder if it's a good time to just take some questions here. There were some questions in the chat. So Eric asked if the icon for the organization data types, the suitcase, can be changed. And the answer to that is not yet. Like in this first version of organization data types, we chose not to have that customization option, but it is one that we are fully aware of it, and it's in our backlog, and we want to provide that at some point. If you don't like the suitcase, some users like the suitcase a lot, others don't. Then there was a question from Just about whether the search goes across just one column, like the row label or the key column, or whether it's all fields that are used in the lookup. And the search is using the Q&A feature of Power BI, and it goes across all of the columns. And you can choose to exclude columns from that search if you want, by using the Q&A settings in Power BI. Then Corey asked if I have permissions on my Power BI data set, does that also affect what I can see in Excel? And the answer, so for example, does record level security, is that enforced by Excel? And the answer to that is yes. However, if you have a user that have access to a certain record in a table and they bring it into the workbook, and they share that workbook with someone else, then those users can actually see that record and the data that's brought into Excel. So in that case, there's no new check of whether the user have access to that, but they cannot refresh that record, or they cannot bring new records in that they don't have access to. And I hope that answered the last part of your question, which is, can I share these things that I create with people that don't have access to the data set, as was what I understood the question as. Good. We can also take questions live by people unmuting themselves.
There's also a question from John.
Yeah, do you want to take that?
Yeah, so it says, so you can look up Excel to Power BI. What if you want to list in Excel all the items in the Power BI table? Possible. Well, if I understand the question correct, then you can connect from Excel to the whole data set in Power BI as well, and we will take a look at that a little later.
Yes, we'll demo later how you can connect a pivot table directly to a Power BI data set. And that is the way that you can sort of get started getting the data out of the data set, and then you can basically take the data from that pivot table and convert it to the data types. There's currently no direct way of sort of enumerating all of the records that you have in the table as data types, but it's a great idea to have that, and something we're definitely considering to do at some point. Anything else?
Yeah, there's also the question here that must connect to Power BI schema in Excel. And I didn't show you the full circle, but what happens is that when you go into Power BI Desktop and you publish the data set into a workspace in Power BI, then you need to have, I believe is it build access or read access to the data set in Excel. And once you have that, then you will actually see the data type showing up in your Excel. So it's of course important that you are logged into Excel in order to use this.
When the user signs into Excel, we will go or Excel will go and look in Power BI for the data sets that the user has access to or have built permissions to, and we'll use that information to put the icons into the data type gallery. So the users don't need to do anything to get a new data type. It's basically the creator of the data types that decides who the data type is shared with.
Yeah.
So just to elaborate on the question also from Adam Hassan, how is the governance around this? If multiple users, how can we say this is the feature table for customers, not these 5 are?
That's a really good question. The way of course, there's nothing that prevents multiple Power BI users to go create a customer table. However, with the Power BI datasets, there's this notion of being able to label the data set as being certified or promoted. And those data sets are actually put at the top of the list. So you have a decision to make which of them you want to have a Power BI admin basically certify. Not everyone can certify the data sets.
I think this is related to organizational data type. So if 5 people make a customer data type, then there will be 5 customer data types in Excel. And then you will, as you saw here, I can quickly show you. Then when you look at, if my Excel wants to respond, when you look at the data type, then you can actually get this description and see who actually created it, and if that is who we trust. Right now, this interface does not tell you, or it actually tells you that this is certified, but it's not highlighted. You need to read things carefully in here. But we cannot prevent people from creating, 10 versions of the same.
No. However, if those certified data sets and the promoted data sets is what the users will see first in the from your organization part of the gallery, and the other ones will be further down the list. There's lots of good questions. Thanks for keeping them coming. There was a question from Christopher around whether you can have several data types in a data set. So if you have one table that has customers and another table that have product information, can you get two data types out of that? And the answer is yes. That's actually how the customers, products, suppliers data types has been created, because they all live in the same Northwind Traders data set that Anders showed you. And then there's a question from Stella about getting geo information, geo tags like longitude and latitude and so on. And the answer to that is yes. Like, as long as you can get data into Power BI and you can transform that data into something that's meaningful to you, you can represent it in the data type. So that includes if you have data that includes geo tags and so on in there. And of course, the built-in data types like geography has some of that information already in them. I'm starting to lose track of what we've answered and so on.
I think there's one.
Do you want to pick a
here.
question?
There's one question here. If you already apply data types on one customer name, is it possible to see all the other company names available in the data set, or do you have to manually type them all?
Yeah, that's in the way it is right now is that it is single value lookups. So you type in a search query like Alfred in this example, or the customer number or the product number or SKU number and so on, and then it looks up that information and returns one item. There's currently no way of saying, hey, give me all of the customers that have this in this group of customers, or have sales that are above this amount and so on, and get that represented in as data types. There you would have to use the pivot tables first and then convert it to data types. Great suggestion for that. And I just see John that says, hey, this is like VLOOKUP. Yes, but it's a much better VLOOKUP. Because the thing is, and I think Andreas later on can tell you about that, is that you actually don't need the table to do the VLOOKUP in your workbook. It exists out there in the Power BI cloud. And we could have called it Power VLOOKUP. Yeah, we didn't, but that's a good suggestion. Okay. Anything else?
There's a question around, I will come back to the general availability later, and please ask the question again if you don't answer it. And then there's also the last question you see now is the description that comes from a feature table. That is the description that you see in here. Description here is list of customers and their contact information. That is what was entered in the feature table when we created it in Power BI Desktop.
Okay.
And now you can take over again, Jakob.
Thank you for that. Let me just see if I have the the slides set at a good spot. Okay, here you go. Here it is. I want to give you another option for how to create data
You need
types.
to share.
Yeah, I'm doing that. So hopefully you can see my screen now.
Yes.
Because I want to.
Yes.
There's cases where a data type can just be a convenient feature inside of your workbook. Maybe you don't need to have something that other people can use other than if they use it inside of the workbook. And we call that custom data types. And what we've chosen to do is to make those with the Power Query. So let me just show you an example of how to use that. So in this particular case, I have a very typical Excel workbook where the person creating this workbook has imported a lot of sales data. And we see when we have conversations with users and they show us Excel workbooks, this is not an unusual sight. And you all know that. Lots of data, and for some users, pretty overwhelming. So this is where the custom data types can help. And the way that's used is it's a transformation in Power Query. So I can go and say, I want to take this data that I have and transform it using Power Query. So now I have my data in Power Query. And I can go and look at the data and see that, hey, I actually have columns like the customer name and the province and the region and the customer segment. And they all seem to kind of relate. And maybe I don't need to see them all in my resulting table at once. So I can choose to go transform this, and we've added a create data type transformation into Power Query that basically takes these 4 columns, and then it asks me, what do you want to call your data type? I want to call it customer. And what do you want the display column to be? In this case, it has chosen customer name already because that's the first one, and I'm happy with that. Then I apply the transformation, and as you can see, the 4 columns that I had before is now just one single column that has all of the information in it. And I can continue that and say, you know, this information, product category, subcategory, product name, that also seems like the same product base margin and so on. Lots of information related to the product. I want to take that and create a data type that I call product. And I want to use the product name as the display column and select that. And again, the same thing happens here. The information is sort of collapsed into one single column in Power BI. And then I can choose to return that back to Excel. And in Excel, I get the result of that, but in a way that's hopefully far less overwhelming than what I had before, because these things are now data types. I can go look into what is here, and I can choose to inspect that, of course, and here's for product, you know, the information I brought in there. What is furthermore cool, if I do want to bring the data into the grid, I can choose to do that and say, please put the product category into this, and it extracts the information from the product using a formula. But I don't need to do that. I can actually go use the filtering capability and say, oh, you have for this column more things to filter on than just the name. So for example, if I want to filter on the thing called product container, whatever that is, I can say only show me the jumbo box ones. And I didn't need, in order to set that filter, I didn't need to bring that into the grid and make this more complex. It can basically filter on those things. So just to summarize here, Custom data types allow you to take any data that you can bring into Power Query. So with the hundreds of connectors that we have there, you bring data in, you choose what columns to group, and then you provide a little metadata that describes what your data type is. And then you have the experience with the card view and the ability to filter and so on, and add this information to the grid if you choose to do so. So again, you do that with the Power Query editor, and the result lands in the grid as data type values and helps you consume this in an easier way within the workbook. Did we have any questions around data types with Power Query?
Will that also work in the Power BI desktop? Or is it only an Excel feature?
This is only an Excel feature. We have yet to bring data types as they are in Excel into Power BI desktop. But who knows? Maybe it will be there at some point. And I think John had a question.
Yeah, I can read it.
Yeah.
If you create a custom data type and then want to add a new column to that data, how does that work?
Well, the way it works is that you basically go back to Power Query, and we can try that. I think we have time to actually show that. So let me go again. Go look at the data, see my queries. I want to take this particular query and edit it. So you go back to Power Query here, and I have the data type transformation. I can basically select, open up that. If I'm really lucky here, I don't know what's going on here. Yes, go to my transformation step that created the product data type. If I go to the advanced tab on this, I can choose to go and say, I want to bring that ship date into that data type. And I want to remove the product container from that. And once I apply that transformation, it will have done that. So you can see that product is still there, but the product container is no longer part of the data type. And then there is no ship date here. It is inside of the data type when I load it back to Excel.
And then there's also a question that says, so this is an internal data type only for this workbook? And yes,
it is.
Yes.
Yeah. It exists in that workbook, and people that have access to the workbook can use it, but it is not a data type that will show up in anyone's data types gallery. The only way to do that today is by using the Power BI organization data types to create those. Yeah. Anything else?
No.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Can you use the is feature table? Could you use Asia analysis services as well?
So that if you have Asia analysis services and can you go and say, okay, I have a table there that I want to mark as a feature table?
Yeah.
I think the answer is yes, if you can bring that data into a Power BI data set. But you need to bring the data into, query analysis services and bring it into a Power BI data set. What we support right now is import mode for that data. So the data needs to be in Power BI. We are looking into adding support for direct query with feature tables, but that's currently not in the product, but something that we are investigating with. Yeah. Good.
Yeah,
I think Stella had a question around SSRS report import. Not entirely sure what you mean by that.
Could you unmute, Stella, perhaps?
When you have refreshable SSRS reports within Excel, imported by Power Pivot.
Yeah. Okay. Now I think I understand it. Like if this, you can use organizational data types on data and custom data types in Power Query on data that has been sort of landed in the grid, with the exception that you cannot do this. Like you can't go and select a number of cells in a pivot table and then say convert to a data type. But if you have the data outside of the pivot table, you can do that. And I think that it's worth an experiment if that works with SSRS as well. So I encourage you to try that and then give us feedback on what you experienced with that.
Yeah, then there's a question here if you can rename data type labels in Power Query column names displayed on the tooltip card.
Yeah. Yes.
So I guess that is just ordinary Power Query.
Yeah, you can rename the labels, and that will then be the name of that field in the card, and also the name when you want to reference the data on the Excel grid. Yeah.
And just has a question or suggestion that you will probably end up creating a dedicated Power BI enterprise dataset with all your dimensions and data types. So that could be a way to do it.
Yeah, that's I think is I don't know if I want to call it a best practice, but that's one of the practices that we have seen is that you create a dedicated data set that has the data types, because you may have, compared to just using the data set for analysis and data visualization, you may have special things that you want to bring into that data set, into those tables when you design it. We should ask Andreas in a few minutes about what he did for his the data types that he created. Okay, let's move on. I want to hand it over to Lars to show you something that is not directly related to data types, but related to getting data into pivot tables from Power BI.
Yes. And I will start directly here in Power BI, and this is again our Northwind Traders dataset. So what you're seeing here is a number of datasets that I have access to in Power BI, and you have to pay special attention to this account and sales because it has, let's say, two features in here. One of them is that it is endorsed, so it's promoted. And then we have also set the sensitivity level to be confidential and Microsoft FTE. So I'm running on the Microsoft tenant right now. So when I go to Excel, then there are actually two options to connect to this dataset. And until we release this, then the option to connect to a Power BI dataset was to use this analyze in Excel functionality that is still around. But now it's much easier. You can do it in two ways. You can go to the insert ribbon, click on pivot tables, and then from Power BI. Or you can go to the data ribbon and say get data, and then from Power BI. It's the same functionality, so when I click on one of them, then all the datasets, Power BI datasets that I have access to is showing up here in the right-hand side of Excel. And now it's looking into the Power BI environment and see what do I have access to. And as Jakob said a number of times now, all our certified datasets is first, and then the promoted comes. So in here I can search for Northwind, maybe. and then it will filter on that, and then I'm selecting my accounts and sales, and you can see here that it's promoted, and it also has the sensitivity label. So when I click on this one, so now Power BI or Excel is connecting to my Power BI dataset. And what happens is that I will get access to create my pivot table from Excel. But what will also happen in a second is that the sensitivity label is carried over from my dataset. So I will get this warning up here, or policy tip, that says that your organization automatically applied the sensitivity label, blah, 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 which was the sensitivity label that was defined on my Power BI dataset. And this particular sensitivity label means that I'm not able to share this data with anyone outside of the Microsoft organization. So in here I can do my the pivot table that I guess that all of you know, and it is connected live to my Power BI dataset. Yeah, I don't think we need to spend too much time on that. That's probably common for all of you. So a short recap of what this is all about is the access to the pivot tables, Power BI tables from Excel. So this quick access, there are two ways to do it. All you have access to in Power BI is also available in Excel, and row level security is of course also respected, and so on. This is kind of the setup of how it has been created. There's a workspace in Power BI called North Wind Traders. Then I have a number of data sets, annual transactions and account and sales, and they are available in Excel as well. And finally, this Microsoft Information Protect is carried over once I have defined my sensitivity label in Power BI. Then it's respected in Excel, so that I am sure that I keep on the same confidentiality level and not expose my data to someone who should not have access to it. That's what you see here. And then our guest speaker, Andreas, I don't know if I should move forward with this list slide.
Let me just, before you do that, let me just introduce Andreas to you. I met Andreas, I think, in the summer of 2016 or so. And he was super nice and invited me over to Brande for coffee and a day talking about Excel. And that was a great learning experience for me, seeing how Andreas and his team really does a lot of really cool things for the only brand at Bestseller. One of the things that we also discussed was things like how to have Excel work better with images and how to make it easier to get data into Excel and so on. So we started dreaming about like how could this be done, and over the years we've continued to talk about this and continue to prototype and work with different parts of the Excel team to make a lot of this happen. And throughout the whole thing, Andreas has been a tremendous help, and also with his team in trying out things, giving us ideas, giving us feedback, and so on. And overall, just been a tremendous collaboration partner on this. And I can say that I think we've come a good part. Andreas can tell you that, but I think we've come a good part down the sort of the wish list of things that we've dreamt of during the last 4 to 5 years. We've still a lot of things that we want to do together, but I'd let Andreas tell you about that himself. So welcome, Andreas, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, and it's really nice to see a lot of the say well-known things which we have been talking about for the past year and two. Jacob's memory is right. We met around 5 years ago, and it's been quite a journey, particularly since we are basically almost there now, which basically we are in production, we are live with the feature, and people are luckily, as expected, I mean, completely wowed by, say, getting an image into an Excel sheet. I mean, it sounds simple. It's anything but, because as soon as you know you want to filter on that data, sort the list, you know, either images go left, right, and center, but at least now they're in the cell and it's working fantastically. So I think one of the comments before, it might have been from John, was about the VLOOKUP. I mean, it's sensational. When people are used to VLOOKUP, this is like next level ×2. It's really, really good for us, particularly because, I mean, we're in a business where information changes a lot, and keeping things refreshed up to date is always a challenge. I mean, VLOOKUP has been like tool number one for us in just about ages, and now we can almost retire it and use data types. So it's been really interesting. We are in a company with a lot of products, which obviously carry a lot of pictures, and getting the pictures into Excel it's just been wish list number one item for, I think, ages. So yes, we've come a long way, and we still have some pretty good ideas lined up. But for now, I think it's safe to say that this is working better than expected so far.
Lars, do you want to advance the slides? Maybe Andreas, you can tell us about one of the first solutions that you created using the data types.
Yeah, absolutely. So like mentioned, we do obviously a lot of products, and getting our product data into one place has been, how can I say, always a challenge, because of course it's stored in small repositories of, you know, descriptions, users' own Excel files. Our system information could be on our ecom site, or could be in our ERP system, plus getting images and everything into just one simple page for people to see and interact with has been a challenge for like ever. You usually need 4 or 5 screens. Now with data types, you can collect it all into one. And just by typing a new style number, basically it computes all the data that you as a user would need to see and to digest when looking at our products and working with our products into just one page. And it's so simple that basically anyone can use it with basically no introduction, which has been truly helpful, because it's working so simple that everyone really clicks on how to use it from the beginning. So here in this case, we used our product information tool, where we set it up in an Excel sheet. If I may, maybe I'll share the screen, if that's okay.
Sure.
Perfect.
So I'll just jump into this Excel file that we have, which I hope you can see in just about now. I'm not sure if you can see my screen.
Not yet.
Not yet. Let me just do the old-fashioned share my desktop. Then I'm hopefully not getting anything wrong. So like here.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'll just try to zoom just a little bit more just to be sure we can see everything. So as you can see here, icon number 1 is the data type we enable on this field. So basically you can enter any style and you get obviously a ton of information about our products, available for any user to see across all in Only and in bestseller. And we also applied the local data type. So we want the user to be able to retrieve a set of default values for those products. So if I'm a user and I want to go work with this, if I know to type the right style number, I will go here, and within, for us, this is a pretty quick feature. I mean, bear in mind I'm sitting at home, but it retrieves data pretty quickly across, I would say, 25 different small silos of data, say images, various product information that we would need in order to present everything to the user in just one go. It's nothing short of fantastic for us, letting the user to be able to interact with the data, do basic drop downs, and letting the user to save the data back into our system, either obviously copy paste, or we've been talking with Jakob about using the Office scripts to automate this step. So we can basically from here recollect a lot of data back into the database using just one page, just one Excel sheet like here. And I think Just was the ones saying we made a central Power BI file with our data, which is pretty much what we've done here. So we basically found the number plates for all of our products. So we go through our styles, our variants, or box configurations, and applying it all into one Excel sheet. So for us, this has been an eye opener, and user adoption has been, nothing short of really, really good. Bear in mind we're in Jutland, so it's been really good, I would say, on getting people to embrace, to take it in and work with it. It's been really cool. Maybe I'll just go one step further. I think it talks into using multiple data types in one document. Just to give you an example. So here we applied, say, both product information as well as box configuration as well as color configuration into one and the same Excel sheet, which is the one you see here on the screen. And from here, working with it, it's so simple. So most users would start, like I think we saw initially, with a set of products. This is so simple. It just works. You apply the data type. I think the Power BI file we're using to reference against has around 1 million rows in the data type is looking up against. And once we apply this, it just goes super quick. We have managed to send out a file, one of these files. Obviously, once you apply the right image sizes to it, I think we sent around 1,800 products in one Excel sheet, which was around 5 megabytes, which was really, really, it's really speedy. It's easy to work with, and it just works. I can keep talking about data types and what it does for us in excessive lengths, which I'm not sure the time permits today. But for us, this has been really, really good. And going back to the initial file about product information, from here, again, bear in mind, we use data types, but the user adoption and getting the users to speak to us, say in the controlling team, has been really an eye opener, because we really get to shape up requirements, talk about what is actually making business value for us. So for that, data types is a perfect enabler, I would say. I'm just
Thank you so much, Andreas, for not only for being a fantastic collaboration partner on this project, like the entire team here in Excel is really, really excited about working with you and your team, and appreciate all the feedback and the way you are working with it and testing it out and trying all the boundaries and so on. So that's pretty fantastic, and we're really happy that we found something that you find useful. But again, I think that your example shows a really good use case for this. You clearly have a lot of need to bring lots of information about your styles into Excel, and it has some very significant benefits from you. We are just about 6 minutes out from finishing up the user group today. So I just want to share my screen to just summarize a little bit about where is this available and so on. Right now, this feature is available to Power BI Pro users. So you either need to have both of the features that we show, the pivot tables and also the data types. So it requires a Power BI Pro license, and you have that if you have an E5 subscription of Microsoft 365. This is something that we are continuously evaluating, like different combinations, like what would this be if the data type is in a workspace on premium capacity? What if the data type is in my workspace? So you will likely see us tweak that thing in the month to come. Currently, everyone that is in current channel or the monthly enterprise channel for Microsoft 365 apps have this feature. It is available there. Come July, August, we will roll this feature out to the semi-annual channel. I know that a lot of you have Excel users and Office users that are in that channel, so it's coming very, very soon. Data types are also available on the Mac in those channels, and we have rolled out the feature to Excel web in production, so it's also very available in the browser, with the exception of images in cells, as both Lars and Andreas showed you. But that deployment actually started yesterday. So if you're among the lucky 10% that have it right now of the users, you will see that. But over the next couple of weeks, we'll get that done as well and be at 100% for production on for images and cells on web as well. It is 100% available on Windows and on Mac. So this is a little bit about availability and the license associated with this. Let me see if I can actually advance the slide. If you don't have stocks in geography or the Wolfram data types in your Excel, please note that the stocks in geography are not available in Danish, so you need to have English as your proofing language installed or authoring language installed. But of course, you can run Excel in Danish to get those data types. The Wolfram data types are available to consumers or consumer subscriptions at the moment, and later on we'll also provide a way that enterprises can enable that in their tenant through an add-in. I think we are ready to wrap up, and before we do that, I just want to say take this for a test run in your tenant. Try to do a prototype data type. Try it yourself. Get a few other users to try it. Do a demo for your team and or the customers that you have in your organization or outside of your organization. And please, please, please do not hesitate to send us lots of feedback through Excel. You may think that Excel is such a big team and Microsoft is such a big organization that we don't really look at that, but we do that as part of our work to see what's coming in. So we very actively monitor the ideas and the frowns and the smiles that you send us through the feedback channels in Excel. Again, we really want to work with you on sort of getting value out of Excel and Power BI. So do not hesitate to reach out to us directly. I put the 3 email addresses in there, and I'm sure Andreas would also be willing to answer questions if you have any related to what he's doing. With that, I want to.
There's actually one question that says from Stella, when will it be available for end users? But these dates that Jakob is mentioning, that is for end users.
Yes, that is for end users. So it's already available if you are on current channel as an end user or monthly enterprise channel as an end user. We are also in semi-annual preview. It doesn't say that on the slide, but we are previewing it for semi-annual. And come July, August timeframe, when semi-annual starts to roll out, we will also be there with the 2 features. I hope that answered the question. Let me just switch out of the slide deck so I can actually see Teams and the chat window. So I think we are at time. So thank you all for your interest, and good luck with using this feature in Excel and Power BI.
Awesome.
Thank you very much, Jakob and Lars and Andreas, for taking the time to present this very exciting feature that I can see in the chats. Not all people had discovered yet, but I'm sure and hopefully they will utilize it. And it will be fun to see. There was one question that I don't think that you perhaps answered, or I didn't see it in the chat. But with headers and details data types. So if I have a customer and I want to see the orders, that is not possible yet, right?
That's correct. That we call that call that nested data types. So this is where you have a relationship between two of your tables. You mentioned customers and orders, and of course that's kind of obvious that you would want to have data types where you expose that and get. If you reference the customer, you can get a dynamic array of all of the orders on that customer. But again, this is something that we really want to do. It's near the top of our backlog for this particular feature. So send us feedback around that, and also share your specific scenarios. And who knows? We'll definitely consider it.
Cool. Yeah, and I've also put a link to a evaluation form. So please take your time to fill it out and give some feedback to Jakob, Lars, and Andreas on the presentation and session. And there's also a text box where you can fill in suggestions for future meetings, and also give feedback on this session. So thank you very much again, and power on, and see you at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.